Welcome to Complex Kids, Simple Solutions, the podcast where we cut through the chaos of raising a neurodivergent and a complex kid with a practical, no-nonsense strategy. I'm Michelle Choairy, speaker, advocate, and a mom of a complex kid myself. If you've ever felt overwhelmed, unheard, or just plain exhausted on this journey, you are not alone. Here we tackle the real struggles head on, share actionable insights, and remind you that small wins matter. Let's dive in and make life just a little bit easier, one episode at a time. You are your child's hero. Today, we're super excited to welcome Erin. Erin is an expert women's wellness and empowerment coach that is revolutionizing the way moms prioritize their wellness and self-care. She specializes in women's health, and Erin also focuses on helping moms cut through the overwhelm, simplify the health process, and get intentional with tuning into their unique bio-individuality. With a master's in social work and certifications that include an ASM, CPT, PN1 nutrition, and Sync for women's health and hormones, Erin brings over a decade of expertise to her work. Alongside her professional education, Erin has successfully built a personal wellness business, generating over 6 figures in revenue while fulfilling her role as a devoted mother of 4. She is the founder of Empowered in Health podcast and has positively impacted numerous individuals with her real, raw, insightful content. Her deepest passion is to work with women on all facets of health and continue creating coaching programs, community, and brand partnerships that are by women and families, for women and families. Her mission is to empower moms to reclaim their identity and renew their strength by leaning into simple, sustainable systems and support. Through her unwavering dedication to growth and her innovative Empower method to coaching, Erin continues to leave an incredible mark on those she serves. Hello, Thrive Tribe. I'm so excited that you're here. Today, we have a good friend of mine that I have met through life and through a brand building event that we went to. We met in person, and she's out of Utah, my old home. And Erin is here, and she is a woman of nutrition and body and taking care of yourself guru. So Erin, welcome.
Michelle, thank you so much for having me. I am so excited to be here and just talk about all things health, motherhood, and whatever you feel like might be really valuable to kind of continue to unpack when it comes to taking care of ourselves.
Yeah, no, Erin, I know we've been talking over and over, and you have been a great support to me, actually reminding me that I have to take time for myself. So first of all, tell me a little bit about how you got involved into, well, first of all, tell us what you do. What do you talk about? How do you help women? Where did this all come from? Tell us a little bit about that.
That's such a great question. And it's kind of a loaded question because my journey has really evolved a lot over time. So I am, just quickly, my name is Erin Trier. I'm a mom of 4. I'm a women's health coach. And I started inside the wellness space in a business model that was really focused a lot on the one size fits all, quick fix, cookie cutter mentality. And while that served me for a little bit in a season, it actually became something that led me to pretty significant burnout over time as my health evolved. And so after my 4th kiddo was born, I really was put into this season of having to relearn and unlearn some of the habits that I thought were quote unquote healthy. And it all came down to just starting to understand my unique physiology and essentially what was really going to serve me in hormone supportive ways for my longevity. And that has been a really uncomfortable process. so what I do in my work is I walk alongside women and we talk about, everything that we're implementing in our lifestyle, whether that's healthy habits or habits that we maybe want to evaluate that no longer serve us. And we really decide, like, how do we come up with a bio-individual health strategy that will really serve you not only today with where you're at and what you feel is manageable in your current life, but also in a way that will adapt with you and will be something that will evolve with you as your health inevitably evolves and changes over time. And so that's really what I'm passionate about as a women's health coach. Is I've learned on a very deep level how our physiology changes and how we need to be educated about what really serves us with intention when it comes to our daily habits and so much more. So that's, in a nutshell, really what I focus on in my coaching practice.
And I love that. I love that. And I have to throw this out there because I was actually in Erin's podcast a couple months ago. And I want to tell you, Erin is amazing because with all of this, 4 kids, doing and helping other women, she has a complex kid. And so I just, that's what drew me to Erin. And I'm so glad that you're here because of that. So tell us a little bit, we're talking to moms and dads that have complex kids. And usually all of the self-care, all of the health, stuff that comes in our lives that we should be doing takes second or third or fourth place in our lives, right? Because most of us want to take care of our complex kid and we want to make sure that they're getting everything that they need. And then we have family, and then you throw your full-time job, and then you throw all these other things into the mix. So let's start with, what would you do? How would you start a mom with a complex kid on your program, or how would you direct them?
That is such a great question. And I think one of the things I've learned most, Michelle, is how much we overcomplicate this idea of health. And I think a lot of that comes from not only the wild amount of information overload we all have to manage, but it's also a lot of mixed information. And so much of it is, here's the plan you should adopt. Here's the nutrition strategy you should put into your life that quote unquote equals healthy. Here's what you need to do and adapt to it rather than the reverse. And we don't give ourselves permission to figure out, like, what does health really look like and feel like to me? And then how can I craft a very specific and personalized plan that feels manageable, that has me feeling excited to show up for my life? And so that's the biggest thing that I want to make sure we speak about is this is supposed to look different for each and every one of us. And there is no one size fits all or one way to feeling really good in your day-to-day life. Are there foundations and fundamentals to focus on when it comes to daily habits? Yes, absolutely. But I like to give women and families and parents permission to say, like, this is going to look a little bit different every single day, and that's okay. So one of the first things I work through with my clients is figuring out what are 3 simple ways you can pour into yourself every single day. And it doesn't need to be some massive time commitment, some huge plan that you feel like you can't stick to, some major strategy where you have to overhaul everything. Like, we're really thinking about simple things, like simple habits that will serve your unique physiology, that will help you feel some sort of sustainable energy, and will essentially help you be in a place of stabilizing your mood and stabilizing so much more. So I like to help people get started with very simple habits. We actually did a challenge a couple months ago where we talked about, like, what are the 3 ways we can start our days for success? And so what I teach people to do is starting the day with hydration. Very simple, like picking up water, picking up electrolytes, picking up something that isn't caffeine or sugar or something that's going to spike you right into extra stress. And instead, like, how are you trying to fuel right out of the gate for sustained energy for the day? That's hydration. That's the first piece. The second is like energizing fuel and trying to figure out, like, how can I really make sure I'm giving my body nutrient dense foods that are, again, going to help me sustain my energy for the life I have to manage all day long. And then the third is something else that speaks to you, whether that's quiet journaling time or reading, getting outside for a walk, connecting with a friend, doing something that really fills your cup. And that looks different for each of us. And so I like to make sure that my clients understand, like, you don't have to come up with this, adopting this box of a plan and putting it into your life. We're going to empower you to do it in the reverse and really ask yourself, what do I need in this season? What feels manageable in this season? What can I commit to? And how can we take little simple steps in order to do that? And so for the person that's listening to this, that feels like maybe they need to start somewhere and they want to start simple, those would be my best 3 tips, is like starting the day for success and focusing on how you can start your day in a way that's energizing. So often when we start the days with like diving right into our phone, having a cup of coffee or caffeine, going straight into a hard workout, like those things at the end of the day do nothing but add immediate stress to our life. All of a sudden we're consuming everything around us and we're not giving ourselves permission to set ourselves up for success in order to tackle the day. And this is something that I've had to learn as a mom of 4, but especially as a mom of a complex child who has a lot of emotion, a lot of behavior, a lot of me needing to be able to show up as my best, most regulated self. And that starts with how I choose to set myself up for success in the day. And I have seen this transform people's lives the more I go through working with clients, but the more I practice it in my own life. When I make these very subtle, specific, simple choices to start my day from a place of control and success and really focusing on what's going to help me fill my cup and fill my energy bucket, more or less, it just changes the rest of the day and the energy of the rest of the day, at least to some degree. I mean, obviously every day is different, but that's kind of my best advice.
I love how simple you make this. Like you break it down into something that is doable. So when you talk about hydration, right? Like, how simple is that? Mm-hmm. Let's go get some water. Drink some water.
Right.
Is that hard? No, that's not hard. Like that is, and I loved it when you sent me your little startup guide, and I looked at that and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so simple. Mm-hmm. And we'll put that on the comments too, if you'd like to share that. Hopefully we'll share all this information with our listeners. But you know, the how simple you make this, it makes it so it's a doable thing, especially for us mamas that are just so overwhelmed throughout the day, right? We go from one therapy to the next, from work to picking up kids, from, you know, all of that. Now, you talked a little bit about the fuel. Can you go into that a little bit deeper? Because when you talk about fuel, you think foods. Yep. And so I would love to hear a little bit more about that.
It's such a big one. And this is something I have had to learn over time. So I grew up an athlete, and I was always in the mentality that as long as I'm moving my body, I can just eat all the things, whatever I want. It doesn't matter if it's balanced. It doesn't matter how much sugar it is. It doesn't matter if it's all carbohydrates, right?
Calories, and that's all you need.
Yeah. And you know, that works for a time, right? That works for a time in our life. But as I've shared, like, our health truly evolves over time. And so for many women specifically, because of our unique physiology, but really for us as humans, like, our health changes. And so our needs and our strategies and the way that we're taking care of ourselves also needs to change. And I don't know about you, Michelle, but one of the things that I've learned more than anything is just how stressful life can really be. Like, we have so many things we are trying to manage, from our homes, from our kids, to our jobs, relationships, marriages, being part of the community. Like, there's just a lot on our plates. And so when I talk to clients about things like nutrition, I like people to understand that when we're not fueling our body with nutrient dense foods, we are essentially adding more stress to our day, because we are adding more stress to our physiology. And we're not able to get into this place of feeling sustained energy and feeling stabilized mood and feeling like we can really show up in a way that feels good. And so that's what I mean when I say fuel. Like, we have to be focusing on what are the different levels of nutrients that we need inside our bodies in order to sustain our energy. That's really the name of the game. And so one of the things that I teach my clients is this idea of how do we think about food groups in different capacities? And how do we essentially build these robust plates that help us balance our blood sugar, not add more stress to our physiology, and essentially set us up for success throughout the day. So when I think about an energizing plate in the morning, I'm thinking about adequate protein. So you're getting that from eggs, you're getting that from a protein powder, you're getting that from a yogurt bowl, you're getting that from tofu or whatever speaks to you. Then you're also getting quality carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are the body's preferred source of energy. So we need to have carbohydrates mixed in with what we're doing in the morning in order to energize how we feel. So that's from, sometimes it's oatmeal, sometimes like something like sweet potatoes, fruits and stuff also are a part of the carbohydrate family. So anything like that you can kind of add into whatever you're doing with fueling for energy in the beginning of the day. And then we're also mixing in quality fiber, sometimes veggies or berries, things along those lines, and then healthy fats. So maybe if it's a yogurt bowl, you're adding peanut butter. Maybe if it's an omelet, maybe you're adding avocado on top. Something like that touches on all these different levels of macronutrients and essentially gives your body this robust opportunity for quality energy right from the beginning of the day. And as I kind of shared, I've learned over time by doing this, rather than getting up, doing a fasted workout on caffeinated pre-workout and then not eating for 3 hours and then trying to show up as a mom, I was so depleted by halfway through the morning. It was no wonder, I was irritable and I couldn't focus and I couldn't help my family and I couldn't help regulate my kids and I couldn't do the things I wanted to do because I wasn't starting from a place of success. And so that's what I want other people, parents, women to understand when it comes to simple habits in the day. If you're focusing on anything, focus on how you're starting your day with success. Focusing on how you are really setting yourself up for quality energy that will sustain you. And I promise it will change how you show up, how you feel, the energy you have, and just the bandwidth you have too, to kind of manage all the different things in your life.
Can I tell you how much I love this? Because you didn't say the word diet not one time in the last 15 minutes we've been here. Yeah. I absolutely love that because, as you grow older or anybody in any time of, in our lives, diet. You talk about fuel. You talk about meals. You talk about nutrients. You don't talk about dieting. Yeah. So, it makes so much more sense in my mind, and my mind actually accepts that so much better than if you were coming and saying, oh yeah, you're going to have a diet of proteins and, most proteins, and then you can add some carbohydrates to it. And, you got to make sure you're eating fiber, but you can only have, 50% needs to be protein. 20% needs to be carbohydrate. When you start getting into that, then you lose everybody.
Right. Yep.
So I love it. Love it. So now I'm going to ask let's keep talking about food first for a minute. Okay. So you talked about the breakfast part. And I like it that you're starting with breakfast and you're not really talking about the rest of your day. Mm-hmm. So is this how you start your program, with the women? Let's start the day and then you add the other parts of the day? Yeah.
Yes, more or less. We focus most on how are we starting our day for success? Because what happens is when you start the day for success with an energizing, robust plate and hydration and strategic choices around, if you want to add in coffee, if you want a caffeinated pre-workout or whatever, we have those things, but we have them after we've energized with fuel and nutrients. So we're not shooting our blood sugar up and spiking our cortisol and adding all this added stress, like I talked about. And then essentially what happens is once you start your day for success, you feel more consistent energy. You don't feel as many crashes. You don't feel those blood sugar spikes, which is what leads to intense cravings or feeling ravenous. And so every time you eat, the idea is to try to build these robust, energizing plates. So just like we did in the morning, that's the goal eventually for lunch. That's the goal for snacks. That's the goal for dinner, is how are we continuing to make sure that when we're thinking about sitting down to fuel our body, how are we looking at this variety of macronutrients to build for energy? Like, that is really, at the end of the day, I know I need the most. And I know most of my clients, like, that's what they need. They need energy to show up for their kids, to manage all the appointments, to be able to show up at their job and to do all the things. Like, we need energy. And what's happened in the wellness space specifically is we've overcomplicated it. We've become like information overloaded with all kinds of misinformation. It's been focused most on what are the things we're restricting and taking out. And that isn't sustainable or enjoyable, you know? Yes. And that's what I'm passionate about helping people understand, is like, we don't have to do this anymore. We don't have to adopt the narrative that has been inside the wellness space, especially for women, for forever. We're changing the narrative. We're focusing on building our strongest selves. We're focusing on building energizing plates and strategies that fill our cup in a way that sustains us for the day. And we're focusing on what we're doing to be the best and strongest we've ever been. And that's a different mentality. And it takes a lot of unlearning through that narrative. Because let's face it, we've all been a part of diet culture. We've all been a part of hearing all the things that we should take out in order to be healthy. And that's just not productive messaging for our longevity health, which is what I want women to understand and embrace the most.
Yeah. You know, Erin, as you were talking, I'm not going to say how old I am, but when I was in college, I was an athletic trainer in my past life. And that was my major in college. And one of the classes that I had to take was nutrition, right? And I remember my teacher standing in front of everybody, and they said, the most nutrient food that a college student can eat is pizza, but just put everything on the pizza, and like vegetables and meats, and that would be the best, because then you have the carbs. And then a few years later, it was like, oh, carbs are no good. So you got to go back to, protein. And then, actually you got to do fats, and it changes on a regular basis.
Yeah.
And it confuses my mind. Where do I go? What do I do? And then you said it, you overcomplicate what it is that you should be doing with your body throughout the day. So yes. Love it. Love that. Now, because I didn't mention my age, I was wondering, how would you help a mom who's over 40? Like, what are the differences here between, the moms who are past the 40 and for the moms who are under 40? Like, what are the differences? Because I'm sure that there is. So yes. Can you talk to us about that?
Yes, absolutely. There are differences. And this is something that I had to learn kind of the hard way in my own personal journey. And it's also something I work with my clients very closely on. So most of the women that I coach are in the 35 to 45, 50-year-old range. And this is a season where we are potentially going through perimenopause, which I'm sure some people have maybe heard of. It's becoming a more popular topic, but it's essentially this season, which a lot of people call second puberty. And it's when women start to go through this hormonal fluctuation and potential hormonal imbalances as our bodies prepare for menopause and essentially not cycling anymore. And that can become a different scenario and a different situation for each and every female, but it's inevitable that every single one of us will experience this in some way, shape, or form, depending on our unique situations. So what I like women to understand in this season is hormonal fluctuation or hormonal imbalance essentially means stress. It essentially means that our hormones are doing this dance where they're not in perfect synergy, maybe like they once were in our life. And so when we have this season of hormonal imbalance, we can potentially have a lot of symptoms, a lot of things that crop up. I know for me personally, it was things like really intense irritability, really overwhelming rage. My anxiety felt so debilitating, I didn't even want to leave the house or say hi to people I knew at the grocery store. I felt really intense fatigue. Like no matter how much I was sleeping, no matter how well I was eating, no matter how much I was trying to take care of my health, like I just never felt energized. I describe it as walking around with a weighted blanket. Like that's how my life felt. I just felt this heaviness all the time. And what I learned in this season is the last thing that I should be doing with my lifestyle is adding more unnecessary stress. So what often happens times with women is sometimes women are going to all the cardio classes. They're going to all the boot camps. They're doing all the HIIT workouts. At the end of the day, those are kinds of activities that add more stress to our physiology. Or they're leaning into things like intermittent fasting for an extended amount of time, or cutting out carbohydrates, or doing things on the nutritional side that, again, add more stress to our physiology. And in this season of 35 to 45 plus, or somewhere in that realm, when our hormones are already out of balance, we have to be very strategic about what we are thinking through when it comes to setting ourselves up for success in a way that isn't adding unnecessary stress. So one of the things I do as a coach is I help women understand, like, how do we ebb and flow your lifestyle in order to make sure it's meeting your physiology? So yeah, there are times when maybe we're hitting a harder workout, or there's times when we're resting very strategically or into more restorative movement that we know is not going to push ourselves into this elevated, stressful state. I know we already talked about this, but life is stressful already. So This is maybe the biggest thing that women in this 35, 40 plus range have to pay attention to, is if you are working to try to figure out how to implement a healthy regimen or a healthy lifestyle or habits that are really going to serve you, you also have to continue to think through this idea of the hormone health lens and addressing stress at all times. Because if you are already stressed and then you go into doing nothing but stressful workouts, you're going to be on the road to burnout. And I've seen it happen time and time again, and I've experienced it in my own health. Like I just was never really in tune enough with paying attention to my physiology until the past 4 to 5 years. And as I've learned this information and as I've coached through it, it's pretty transformative how much you can change how you feel, mostly from an energy standpoint, when you start to work with your physiology and really address things like stress and lifestyle, etc.
You know, you talk about stress. Who is not stressed in this world?
Right.
And as moms of complex kids, like we have that extra stress added. And I love that you said that the workouts can also be a stress for us. And so the whole thing here, and that I'm gathering from what you're saying, is that you got to make it simple. Mm-hmm. And that's something that I've never talked to any health coach. Like whenever I talk to them, it was never make it simple. It was the opposite. It was like, okay, here, I'm going to give you this. This is what you're going to eat. This is what you're going to do. This is what, and then they give a printout, and then you go and then you do it. And then you're stressed about like what you're going to cook, meal prepping, and then doing all this stuff on top of going to therapy, picking up your kids from school and all of that. Like that just makes it like, it makes so much sense how you're talking about making it simple.
Yeah.
Now, as far as, and I'm going to go back to hormones a little bit more, because, you hear a lot about replacement hormones and all of those things that come along with the premenopausal time in our lives. What do you do? What do you tell your moms and your clients to manage it in a more natural way? And besides the stress, do you do any supplements? Do you work with those, with supplements, I guess is the question.
That's a great question. So there's a lot we can do naturally to try to optimize our hormone health. However, I want women to understand that you can't always lifestyle your way, so to speak, to hormonal balance. And so one of the things that we haven't been educated about enough is how there is a huge mental and emotional factor to hormonal fluctuation. And it's something that we haven't been educated about. I know for me, like I learned in, fourth, fifth grade health class that my body was going to change, that I eventually was going to have a cycle, and that here's how you can get pregnant or not get pregnant. It was not deeper dive education on here's how your hormones actually fluctuate. Here's what they're doing. When your hormones are at these levels, this is how your brain might feel. And essentially like normalizing that process. I never had that education until, again, the last handful of years as I've been diving into more of this female physiology scope of practice and trying to really figure out how do I support women well with their evolving health. And so that's really the biggest thing that I want women to understand is this idea of when you have this season of hormonal fluctuation and you potentially have symptoms that you can start to identify, it can be really powerful to get connected to a knowledgeable practitioner that can go deeper dive root cause testing on your physiology and give you very targeted and strategic ideas on supplementation or hormone replacement therapies or things that can help you personally feel optimized. And that's really what I coach women through. Like that's kind of another side of the wellness puzzle is supplementation and supplements and the industry overall is kind of wild, right? There's some wild claims online. There are endless amounts of supplements you can potentially choose from. And what I like women to understand and feel empowered to know is that at the end of the day, until you kind of have targeted testing and until you understand your individual vitamin and mineral deficiencies, and until you really know where your personal hormones are at, supplementation is kind of a shooting in the dark trial and error process. They are incredibly powerful for supplementing great lifestyle habits. But in order to really maximize them, you have to have targeted data. Like you can't really figure out what's going to serve you best without knowing what your physiology is doing at a cellular level and beyond that. And so I like to really talk to women about the value of targeted testing. And I have, practitioners that I work with inside my coaching practice and people that I know, like, and trust who have incredible knowledge when it comes to women's health. And that's really what I want women to understand is if you're in a season where you feel like you're identifying symptoms, don't be afraid to address this idea of targeted testing and then essentially figure out how you can get into targeted supplementation from that. The biggest thing to know is, and this is what I've learned too in my own personal wellness, is with doctors specifically, it all comes down to scope of knowledge and scope of practice. And there are a lot of doctors that don't necessarily have the functional lens related to female physiology and hormone health, which is why you want to be connected to a coach like me or a targeted practitioner that specializes in understanding hormonal imbalance, the symptoms that may occur from those things, how you can adjust lifestyle, and how you can get targeted on supplementation through getting really targeted testing done for you. So it's kind of a big question, but hopefully that kind of gave you a snapshot.
Oh, no, for sure. But I have to tell you that the biggest thing that my biggest takeaway from what you just said is that it's a supplement. Mm-hmm. You have to be doing what we talked about earlier on the podcast.
Yes.
Then you can go ahead and you can supplement, because I feel like a lot of moms, and I'm guilty, you want to go to the supplements and you expect the supplements to do the job for you. And that is not necessarily how things work. If you're not well, the supplements are not going to work.
Exactly.
So you have to do those simple things in the beginning, and then the supplements will come later.
That's absolutely right. And that's probably one of the most profound things we can understand for all of us, parents, women, people that are working on their health. Supplementation is a supplement to the healthy lifestyle foundations. Like the basics of health can never be tricked, right? You have to be focusing on the basics of health in order to really continue to help yourself feel your best and your most energized from the inside out. And I'm a firm believer in strategic supplementations. I have strategic supplementation brand partners that I love and adore and point people to in a way that I feel like can serve them based on their specific situation, symptoms, physiology, goals, etc. But so often, especially in the wellness space, we've all been there. We've all been marketed in some way how this is the thing you need in order to feel XYZ, or in order to lose this amount of weight, or in order to fix this specific problem. And that is just an empty promise. And that's the reality. And it's a hard one because so many of us want what's fast, wants what's quick, what's easy. We all live a busy life. Just get me from A to Z. And that's just, for our longevity, that is never going to be the answer. So I want to continue to empower people to know, like, if you keep it to the basics, if you stick to the simple things and then get strategic on other ways to fill gaps as you need to, like, that is the road that's going to inevitably help you the most.
Sometimes I wish that I had a little wand that you could just go beep, boppity boom, and then things would just change, right away.
Right.
But unfortunately, that's not how life is.
Right.
And we need to understand that, and we need to take care of ourselves. One of the biggest things that I talk to my parents about is self-care, Erin.
Yeah.
So can you tell us a little bit about your life and how you have made this work for you with having 4 kids, one of them being a complex kid, and still doing what you're doing and coaching and living the life that you're living? Tell us a little bit about that.
So self-care has been something that has changed in different seasons of our life for me and my husband. When I still remember back to when we had 1 kid, and, there were so many things that felt hard in that season, because no matter what your family dynamic is, no matter what your kid situation is, no matter how many kids you have, whatever you're managing is hard. And that's something that we need to own and validate and make sure people feel seen and heard in, because whatever your situation is hard. And in self-care in that season, I remember felt hard, even with 1 kid. And I was trying to figure out, how do I manage this? And how do I figure out, what this is going to look like in order to show up for myself, but also show up for my family. And as we had more kids and as we grew our family, all of the needs changed, and all of the things we had calibrated with our family rhythm completely shifted. And so we've had to ebb and flow and really embrace this concept of total imperfection, and that every single day is going to look a little bit different, and that's okay. And that's kind of what I talked about in the beginning, is how do you focus in on 3 simple things you can do day to day in order to fill your cup? And every day might look a little bit different. Sometimes it might be an awesome workout class with a friend. Sometimes it might be 5 minutes early in the morning without your kids up yet, where you just have a quiet moment to do something just for yourself before the house wakes up. But what I would say related to self-care and our life and what it's meant for my family, and really what it's meant for me as a mom, and even my husband too, is we've learned that taking care of ourselves is what gives us the actual energy and the capacity to manage the different needs in our home. And one of the most significant things I learned about myself is I get very easily triggered when I don't take time for myself. And I have a much harder time regulating my own emotion, my own behavior, the way I show up, my own tone. I just can't manage it the same when I'm not taking a moment to pour into my own needs. I've learned that over and over and over. And one of the biggest ways I've learned it is our son, our complex son, literally learns and mimics and mocks all of the behaviors that my husband and I exude, good and bad. So when we have a tone, or we show up with anger, or we show up with irritability, he adopts that. And then he starts to show up in his life in that way. And that was a big wake up call for us to really start to understand, if we're showing up that way, and if we're not pouring into ourselves, and if this is the tone we're using in our family, our son is adopting it. And then he's going out into the world and doing that. And it was this very interesting mirror that my husband and I kind of had to look back into and say, you know what, we need to really make sure that we're doing what we need to regulate how we show up mentally and emotionally above all else. And that came down to self-care. It came down to moving our bodies. It came down to eating things that weren't going to crash our blood sugar and make us crave all the things. It meant getting quality sleep as often as possible. And above all, it meant communicating with each other and saying, you know what, this is where my tank is at. I need to refill it here. I need you to pass the baton and take this for a little while. So we're very much a partnership and communicating about how we feel in our individual lives and what we may individually need as parents in order to show up in a way that serves our family and serves our son and so much more. And so it's our lifeblood. It really has been the thing that has helped us sustain the way we need to continue to show up and learn and grow through this very challenging path we're on as parents of a complex child. And so that's really kind of our story around self-care and why it matters so much to us.
What an example you are.
Oh my gosh, I appreciate that. It's a mess. It's a mess. Don't be fooled. Don't be fooled. It's a mess. It's still a mess. We try our best.
Exactly. You're trying, you're doing the work, you're showing up, and you know that unless you are well, your child is not going to be well.
Right.
And that is something that with the moms that are listening, if you are not well, your child will not be well. And in complex kids, which is one thing that you mentioned about your son, and it's the same with mine, they can feel so deeply.
Yes.
More deeply than neurotypical kids. I think that they have to have that sixth sense, to really be able to participate in life when they're complex, or I'm not sure what it is. Can't put my hand on it. I don't have a name for it. It's just that they feel you. Yeah. So that is why it's so important to take care of yourself and show up for them.
Yes.
Okay, Erin, we're getting to the end here. I want you to take a minute and tell us whatever else last minute that you would like for the mamas to know. And then also, where can they find you? And we'll have everything on the notes too, but where can they find you? And last words for my mamas.
Michelle, thank you again for having me today. It's been such a joy to just share my heart. And the biggest thing I want women to understand, or moms of kids with complex kids to understand more than anything, is that you are truly worth the same level of love and care. You personally are, and you don't have to prove yourself in some way or work extra hard to feel worthy of that. You are just innately, that is available to you at all times. And I think what often happens as moms with these children is we pour so hard into advocating for them and making sure they're set up for success and figuring out ways to get other interventions in place and making all the appointments and going to all the things and doing all the interventions. And we pour so hard into really wanting to make sure that they have the best quality of life possible, that they have somebody advocating for everything that they need in the best possible way as they grow older. And I just want you to give yourself permission to give yourself that same level of dedication. Because if you don't, it will feel 10 times harder to show up continuously with consistency in a way that feels good for all of those things that you're managing. And I say this from a place of experience, from a place of being extremely burned out at one point in my life. I've had to learn the hard way that if you don't fill your cup, in some other way, you're going to get run over. In some other way, it's not going to be the way I know that you crave to show up, not only for your family, but for yourself. And so make sure that you're really taking that pause and asking, what do you need? And then giving yourself permission to take that space and take that time, because I promise you, it will help you show up in so many ways, in so many really productive, beautiful, joyful ways. And I know that's what you crave the most, because you have a huge heart for your family and for your kids. And so it's been such a joy to share my journey today and share a little more about the work I do. I would love to connect with any of you. You can find me on my website, erintrier.com. I'm also on Instagram at Erin K. Trier. And I'm just so grateful to connect with all of you.
Oh, Erin, thank you so much for coming here. I learned so much from you today. Thank you. Thank you for your kind words and your guidance to our mamas. And moms, just go look Erin up. She's amazing. We will see you next time. That's it for today's episode of Complex Kids, Simple Solutions. If you found this helpful, please be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any of our future episodes. And if you're looking for more support, join our Thrive group on Facebook, where we dive deeper and connect with other parents. For more information,
be sure to visit www.wisdom4complexkids.com, or you can also reach me at www.michellechoairy.com. Remember, you are doing an amazing job. Take it one step at a time, and I will see you next time. You are your child's hero.